Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chicken Dragon, and it is time for my review of KOTOR. I want to start off by telling you my history with KOTOR. I first played KOTOR when I was about 10. I played it on my Xbox, and it inspired my love of the RPG genre. It felt like everything I had ever wanted in a game: a light side and a dark side system, a wholesome story, good graphics for the time. It was clearly a labor of love, and I love Star Wars already, and this game made me dig even deeper into that. These developers, when they made this game, it's clear that they loved Star Wars and that they loved RPGs, and they made an excellent game because of it. Later, once I got a little bit older, I grabbed the PC version and found Yavin. That wasn't in the Xbox version. I played through the story again and again. Eventually, I moved on to other RPGs, but KOTOR remained my benchmark for a great game. And it remains, to this day, one of my benchmarks for a great RPG. Something that you need to understand is KOTOR is a product of its time. It doesn't have great graphics compared to modern standards. Old school D&D fighting mechanics. It has old school D&D fighting mechanics. It lays the groundwork for other BioWare titles, and it's fairly obvious if you've ever played another BioWare game. It's overall excellent, with a few caveats leading me to give it a score of 9.5 out of 10. If that's all that you're looking for in this game, then you can now leave this review. It's a 9.5 out of 10. If you're looking for more in-depth, though, I'm about to give you that. I'm going to start off covering combat. Combat isn't what I would call clean. The system won't necessarily give you a hit, even if it shows you actually did through the combat animations. The system will also give you hits where you clearly didn't, as shown by the combat animations. This is due to the D&D style combat, which is governed by hidden dice rolls based on your stats in the game. This can lead to situations where combat can feel a little bit clunky rather than clean cut. This can be a bad thing, but it works. It does a good job of balancing game combat without it feeling easy. However, it can feel like you have little to no control over what's going on sometimes. I really kind of like this system because it's done well in this game most of the time. Done poorly, this can leave you with a sense that the fight is unfairly slanted against you, but at least in this game, most times it works, and it leaves you with a feeling of achievement rather than abject fairness when you beat a boss. Next I'm going to cover skills, feats, and force powers. Skills and attributes were clearly based off of previous RPGs because it works. It works well because it doesn't break established formulas. If you've played other RPGs, you know pretty much how the rules governing skills and attributes work. As you put more into attributes, it will give you stuff like strength will govern your stuff like strength will increase how hard you hit. Stuff like dexterity will help you dodge better. All of this is governed by a series of dice rolls that are hidden from the player. The feats and force powers work really well as far as abilities go. The bonuses that are given make sense and are in no way over or underpowered for the character that's being played. That said, force powers are a little bit unfortunate. They're pretty much tied due to the universe's lore, and here's what I mean by that. Light side characters have a much harder time using the offensive force powers that are considered dark side. This becomes troublesome later in the game as you fight more and more groups of enemies and need to use some of the more area-based dark side attacks. It's not game-breaking, but it is unfortunate. It's also vice versa. If you're fighting a single opponent and you're a Darksider, a lot of times you're going to want some of the more defensive force powers that you can only use regularly if you're a light side character. This is because if you're not aligned to the light side force powers become harder for you to use, and vice versa with dark side. Next is the story, and oh man, what a story. This is where KOTOR is strongest. KOTOR's 10 main characters contain some of the strongest acting in gaming today. Except for T3, of course, because all he does is beep and whistle, and while he does, he doesn't have the same charm as R2-D2 from the original trilogy. Other than him, all the other characters are relatable and well acted, with moral crises that can be influenced by your character. These characters are the kind that when you leave the game, you know how they would react to the world and the situations you would face every day. HK-47 would have a hard time not shooting up a place simply because he can't stop himself. He enjoys that psychotic emotion. Canderous would love a fight and take a fight over almost any other way of diplomacy. Bastila would rush in headlong into combat while at the same time advising wisdom when necessary to persuade. Jolee would would negotiate his way out if he could, but wouldn't be afraid to use his lightsaber if it became necessary. The stories in the side quests themselves are filled with situations that could have easily been taken out of real life. The soldier who has to choose whether to give the enemy information or watch the men under his command be tortured because he refuses to give it. The lovers who want to decide to be together despite what their parents want. The father who's looking for his daughter. Who appears to have run away. You have to decide what your response is going to be to these situations and what impact you want to have on the characters around you. And overall, it is done really, really well. None of the side quests feel particularly frivolous, and there are some amusing side quests. However, each one of them is special. Each one of them has you connecting with the characters on some level. It doesn't feel like a fetch quest. It doesn't feel like a simple running around to do nothing. It doesn't feel like you're being given the runaround for some small reward that you're going to get. It feels like a treasure. It feels like they want you to be immersed in the world. And so you are. That said, there are times when the dialogue can be a bit heavy-handed in its approach, with obvious light side and dark side decisions, and some of the cheesiest lines you will ever read. An example of this can be found when you're talking to the Jedi Council on Dantooine for the first time. One of those dialogue trees, you're given 3 choices. One of the first is saying the option of saying something like, "I couldn't be happier to serve the power of light." The second option reads something like, "Lie, persuade. I couldn't be happier to serve the light side of the Force." With the third option being more of a, "Okay, yeah, I'll do it." Basically, this is stuff that sometimes you would never say this in real life, and that can be a little bit of an immersion breaker. And I understand. It's not necessarily great writing, but it does add a little bit of comic relief at times. Lastly, I've come to audio. Oh man, that audio. This is one of the few areas where I can find little to no flaws. The soundtrack is written by Jeremy Soule, the guy who also wrote the music for Morrowind, Oblivion, and Skyrim. They cared enough about this game to give it its own soundtrack. Not just a copy of John Williams' work with the Star Wars films, but its own music track. And it's awesome. The music brings a certain level of immersion into the games, and it is really hard not to love. The quality of the voice actors is really high as well, with performances like Jennifer Hale, who played Bastila, and she later went on to perform Commander Shepard in the Mass Effect games. All of this voice acting is that high quality. It is amazing. And only adds to the characters' feelings and emotions. My closing thoughts are this. Overall, KOTOR does show its age, yes, but it also holds its own. KOTOR is a heartfelt entry into the Star Wars franchise that shows the love that the developers had for the universe. The game isn't perfect, but its shortcomings are more than made up for with the fact that it is so complete. The story is solid, the characters are memorable, the gameplay is good, the pacing is just right. The music is excellent, and it all comes together with a layer of polish on it that just often isn't seen in the game today. There's so much more I could say about KOTOR, so much more that could be mentioned, but I think you get the general idea. I highly recommend this game to anyone who loves games. If you love RPGs, this is one of the foundations on which modern RPGs stand. If you liked any BioWare game in the last 10 years, this is the game that you should play next if you haven't already. If you like a great story, KOTOR has it. If you like great music, KOTOR has it. If you like a variety of characters, KOTOR has it. Play the game for yourself. I promise you, you will not be sorry.